This is the Aputure Nova 300C. It is a crazy powerful LED panel that also has a pretty steep price tag of $1,700, but in this video I'm going to talk about why this light is worth every penny and why I'll be purchasing more than one. Before we dive in, I do want to disclose that Aputure did send this light to me to be reviewed. That said, my opinions are my own and they will not be seeing this video before it goes up. So this light fixture is one of the most advanced you can purchase right now on the market. It's also one of the most affordable, in quotes, when you look at the competition, and it is by far the most advanced light we've seen from Aputure to date. Unlike a lot of Aputure's previous lights, this one is designed to be used on film sets and even in rental houses, so you know it was designed to take an absolute beating, and it has to be able to keep up with other industry giants like ARRI and their sky panels. And if that price tag completely blows your mind and turns you off, we'll be talking about alternatives on a budget depending on your uses. So this light can pretty much do anything you would need a light to do, with exception to really pointed sources or hard light sources. And we'll be later in the video getting into several setups showcasing what this incredible light can do. If you'd like to skip ahead to that, here's the timestamp for that part of the video. So let's talk about what comes with this light if you pick one up. It comes in two different kits, one without a case and one with a case. And within that case, you will find the light fixture itself, the controller with a removable cable hanger, two controller cables, a 2-foot and 10-foot, which I love, meaning you can mount the controller on the rear like you see here with a nice short tidy cable, or have the controller a distance from the light. Really handy. The light also comes with one AC power cable and a super clamp style quick release for the controller if you wanted to mount it to a stand or something else. The light has a built-in baby and junior combo mount, so you can mount the light to a standard stand as well as junior receivers like the base of a Turtle C stand. The controller can be mounted on the rear of the light or on a stand with the included clamp and can be daisy chained with standard 5-pin XLR cables. The quick release system for these Aputure controllers is just the best. It's so satisfying to use, solidly locks every single time. The light has three inputs on the back, a controller input, as well as a DC and AC input. Out of the box, you can use the AC cable to power up the light, and if you want to use batteries, Aputure has a dual battery mount system that will be available soon. If you want to use DMX controllers, there is a DMX in and out at the bottom of the controller box, and there's even a USB output on the side of the controller for power and firmware updates. The Nova also has an accessory slot on the front of the entire fixture, allowing you to use attachments like the $150 Aputure softbox and other modifiers. You can control the angle of the light with the brake handle and the metal top handle, which is crazy solid. When it comes to actually controlling the light, you have two options available to you: the included controller and the Sidus Link app. The control box gives you complete control over the Nova without ever having to use a phone or tablet. Everything is where you would expect it to be, including the power button, light mode button for changing between RGB and CCT, dials for changing the light settings, preset buttons which can be held to save your settings for future use, a menu button for a ton of settings including fan settings, custom dimming curves, frequency controls to avoid flickering, and much more. When you enter the light modes, you're going to be greeted with a ton of options, and this light really is one of the most advanced when it comes to how many choices you have. In each mode, you can use the three controller dials to make changes to your settings, and these light modes include CCT, which is a standard lighting mode, giving you control over intensity, color temperature, and a green and magenta shift, which is really handy. HSI gives you that good old hue, saturation, and intensity for controlling color. The FX mode gives you 15 different special effects modes, each of which have another set of changes and custom settings you can create. RGB gives you the traditional red, green, and blue channels. XY allows you to use the X and Y axis to find the color you're looking for, and the source mode gives you 45 light source presets to choose from. The gel mode allows you to choose between tungsten or daylight, and then add digital gels including Lee and Roscoe options. All of the light settings can be controlled with even more precision on the Sidus Link app. There are even more modes available in the app, like the amazing source match, which uses your phone's camera to capture light and color information, which the Nova can replicate. So that's just control on this light. There's so many different options, but to really understand how powerful this thing is, we need to start looking at some color and output specs. First, let's start with the fun one, which is output. I compared this light to my Aputure 300X and my 300D Mark II. Now this Nova light has a huge range when it comes to the color temperatures from 2000 all the way to 10,000. So I measured several different settings down the line, and as you can see, it keeps up with and smokes the 300X when it comes to output, but doesn't quite reach 300D Mark II levels, but gets pretty close. And you got to keep in mind, this has a soft panel, it's a larger source, so that's really impressive. In the color department, I measured most of the color temperature settings and was impressed that each of those settings was really accurate. Most lights I test are usually pretty far off from the advertised color temperature, but this light was getting really close, so always appreciate seeing that. I also tested extended CRI and got really good ratings on this light. So overall, you can pretty much replicate any light source and dial in things like your green and magenta shift, all with very accurate and high quality color. So with all the specs out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into a couple setups that will really show how amazing this light is. And the first one I want to dive into is the color. What's special about this light versus something like the Aputure MC is that it not only does color like the MC, but it does it at an insane output level. So for this first setup, I took the light, bounced it into a 4x4 foam board, and used it as a key light. I also threw in a couple Aputure MCs for various kicker, background, and hair lights. Now, since I'm using all Aputure lights, I was able to connect them all to the Sidus Link app on my phone and just sit there and start playing with different color combinations. This is the first time I've been able to use a color light as a key light because it takes a lot of output to make this happen. So for special effects, music videos, and things like that, you can do a ton with this light, and you really do need something with this much output to make that possible. The next setup is a little more boring, and that's to use this light as just a standard key light. You could use the Aputure softbox that you can purchase alongside the light, but since this thing is so bright, I decided to bounce it into a white 6x6 sheet and use that as my key light. Even though this is already a large soft light hitting something and bouncing toward me, I only had the light at about 25% for this setup. The next setup is one that I'll be using a lot for my thumbnails going forward and just sets in general, and that's to use it as a simple background light. Again, because this thing is crazy bright in color modes, you can replicate any color and use that as your background. One of my favorite ways to use this light is to play around with saturation. When we think RGB, we usually think super saturated colors, but I love that you can finesse it and turn the saturation down to get some really soft colors that makes a big difference on your backgrounds. So if you do a lot of product photography or filming, this light is pretty much the dream fixture when it comes to that kind of thing. And last but not least, this light also has all those great built-in effects, so you can do all kinds of stuff to really spice up your scene, your videos, music videos. There's so many uses for this thing. So with all that out of the way, let's talk about some of the cons of this light. And in my opinion, there are really three. The first is going to be the fan noise. It is not a silent light. So here are some numbers when it comes to the fan noise compared to the 300X and the 300D Mark II from Aputure. This doesn't really bother me as this light isn't designed to be silent. It's designed to be really powerful, very bright. So I'd rather have that. You can always turn the fan to auto or turn down the fixture of the light. Again, it's so bright you might not even need it at 100% all of the time. So that's one thing. The other is going to be the price of this guy, and it's, you know, for a lot of people, very expensive. For what it is, it's not very expensive at all. And to those of you who are saying, why would you ever recommend this light? Well, if you don't need all of these features, then yes, it would be very expensive to purchase this and only use it as a key light set to daylight. But if you need the high output when it comes to color, that's where this light really shines, excuse the pun. If you just need a little bit of color, the Aputure MC is essentially this light shrunk down to something that's cost $90 and is missing some features, but it's a great little fixture if you just need little pops of color. And the last con is going to be the form factor. Again, if you don't need that kind of output and power, this fixture is a lot to handle. It is very heavy, bulky. You need a really beefy stand to use it, so it's not going to be perfect for everybody. And again, I think that's where lights like the MC are perfect, because you get 85+% of the features with something that can fit in your back pocket. So at the end of the day, I think this light is worth much more than what Aputure is charging for it. It is a phenomenal tool that'll be in your kit for a long time. It's built like a tank, has so many different uses, and it's just a phenomenal tool. So hats off to Aputure for making something this robust with this many features. If you want to learn more about this light, you can check it out in the link in the description. And that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will see you in the next video.